The Big Ten may have more threats than we think.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm Kalia Butler, a sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. Alongside me is Sophia Jones, the analyst for the Golden State Valkyries. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. I'm sure everyone can use a little happy hour after spending that Thursday full of family for Christmas to any of those that celebrate. But before we get into all of that, today is Tuesday, which means it's another great day to talk about women's basketball, which we do essentially every day. We're going to talk about some of the best freshmen that we are seeing within the NCAA. We're going to go over this week's AP polls and some of the biggest shifts that we've seen. But first, we're going to recap the Michigan State Ole Miss game. Michigan State coming away with a win, 66-49 over Ole Miss. This was a Cherokee Invitational Championship that was held in Cherokee, North Carolina. Michigan State controlled the game majority of the way, especially in the third quarter is when that really started to break away from them. What did you really like about Michigan State's performance, and how does this kind of just add to what we're seeing out of the Big Ten in general?
Yeah, like you said, it was the third quarter, kind of those middle quarters specifically, that they were able to create some separation against Mississippi, outscored them 14-8 in the second quarter, and then 23-12 in the third. In the second quarter, Ole Miss or Michigan State forced Mississippi into a 4-minute scoring drought. They had 4 turnovers in 6 minutes. The Spartans went on a run during that time. And so the Rebels went the final 6 minutes and 17 seconds without a field goal. And those 8 points that they were held to was a season low in a quarter. So Michigan State just coming out with some really stifling defense. And then in the third quarter, Rashunda Jones scored 8 of her 13 points there. That Michigan State only led 26-20 at the end of the first half, but they punched early in the second. Ole Miss was able to stay a little bit connected, but then the Spartans used a 17-7 run to take a 49-32 advantage going into the fourth quarter, which that helped to really allow them to play comfortable and free in that fourth. But in that third quarter, Michigan State shot 69%. They were 9 of 13. So that was really helped to boost them in a game that wasn't the cleanest by any means. Michigan State, they won, but they had 22 turnovers. For Mississippi, they had 20 turnovers. So it was a very defensive-heavy game. And Michigan State just quite frankly shot better. And that's where, when you look at a lot of the statistics, there weren't any that jumped out too much. Michigan State had more favor in the paint. They outscored Mississippi 36-24, so they held that edge there. But it was really just the shooting, like I mentioned. Michigan State shot 49% on the game compared to Mississippi only shooting 33. Both teams struggled from the free throw line as well. Michigan State was 13 of 20, that's 65%. And then Mississippi, 13 of 25, 52%. So that's what I refer to when I talk about it not being the cleanest game by sorts. Even having, for Michigan State, it was their lowest scoring game of the season. Luckily, they held Mississippi to also their lowest scoring game of the season. So it counteracted each other.
Yeah, when you talk about the scoring efforts for both teams, it was heavy defensive play. Both teams couldn't necessarily overly get it going. You hate missing out on those free points, but Ole Miss really struggled when it comes to any sense of depth from their team. You can tell obviously by the score, but also when we're comparing Michigan State in terms of the players that were able to contribute, had Grace Van Sluten, who had 16 points, 10 rebounds, solid double-double performance from her. But she also was contributing in other ways. She had a handful of assists. She was doing really well on the defensive end of things as well. So she was kind of the main anchoring factor for the Spartans. Then you had Isaline Alexander, 14 points, 6 rebounds. She had a lot of physical dominant play inside. Rashunda Jones, 13 points. She hit some good shots, especially from the three where both teams were kind of struggling from for some time. But especially within that third quarter run that kind of really cemented Michigan State pulling away. But if you look on the other side for Ole Miss, Cody McMahon, who's the leader for Ole Miss, had 13 points, but she struggled overall with her outside shooting, and we know how dominant she can be for this Ole Miss team. So Michigan State relying definitely on that defensive flow for them and a little bit more depth compared to what the Rebels were able to do.
Exactly. And like I said, in a game that you can very well see where it's won in the margins, where aside from the shooting, the numbers are pretty similar. Even looking at the rebounding, Michigan State only out-rebounded them 37-32. So again, pretty similar in numbers. It's that those little things like the depth and who just might be able to go a little bit harder in a given moment. Looking at some of the minutes distribution for Mississippi, the two players that came off, or they play more bench players, but the two main contributors played 15 minutes and 13 and a half. So not going super deep, which again, you can see why Michigan State was able to have that edge. But going back to your question, your question about how this sets up Michigan State for Big Ten conference play. Michigan State has played their last 6 games away from home. So including this last one, that was their 6th game, but they're 6-0 at home, 4-0 in neutral site games, which this past game would have considered being one, and 1-1 in road games. So I find it interesting that looking at the scope of the season, they have only played 2 true road games. I still think that this was a great win. It can be considered an upset because Michigan State was the lower ranked team. So I think it's a really great win before heading into Big Ten conference play, because right after the holiday break, that's all that they will be seeing. And I think this is just a really great one to have that momentum. But at the same time, I look at the fact that they haven't really been tested that much on the road, that their one loss of the season came on the road against Wisconsin. So you kind of keep that in the back of your mind and wonder how they're going to deal and stand up to some of these adverse environments.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about obviously Big Ten play as of right now, and we'll get into it in our next segment as well. But Big Ten has 8 ranked teams. In Wisconsin, a team that isn't ranked, but as somebody who saw Wisconsin play firsthand, if you go into their territory, it's going to be very difficult to come out with a win. And that reigns true for essentially every Big Ten team that people are going to be going up against. A very powerful conference. And we're kind of seeing them, just each team within the conference, climb the ranks more and more. Obviously, we always look to the SEC, and Big Ten is just kind of continuing their rise. Maybe the ACC will have a couple more trickled in coming up soon. But coming up after this, we are going to talk a little bit more about this week's AP polls and who has made some shifts within it. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. And if you were anyone that was like me watching the Bears-Packers game, we all know about momentum swings and my boy Caleb Williams and DJ Moore getting it done, but that's besides the point. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, this week's AP poll, with no shock here, is going to look relatively similar to the week before. The top 7 teams have remained unchanged, with UConn remaining at number 1. You have Texas, South Carolina, UCLA, LSU, Michigan, and Maryland. They have all cemented those stops within the top 7 for the last couple of weeks now. The teams getting the most votes have been UConn and Texas to remain in that number 1 and number 2 spot. But I think an interesting thing to point out here is some of these unbeaten teams within the AP polls. There are 12 undefeated teams there's 12. Numbers are hard. There are 12 undefeated women's teams left through Sunday, which is Alabama, Arizona State, Texas, Texas Tech, who are all 14-0. Georgia, Iowa State, LSU, Maryland, and TCU are 13-0. Nebraska, UConn, and Vanderbilt are sitting at 12-0. UConn off to one of their best starts, which just sounds a little bit silly, but UConn is 12-0 start for the first time since the 2019-2020 season. And it looks like that's going to remain unchanged for some time. And when we're looking at Texas, they had a victory over Northwestern State, where Madison Booker matched her career high with 28 points. So these teams just kind of remaining dominant. The top 7 aren't going to change, I believe, for probably another couple of weeks when we're really getting into full swing of conference.
Exactly. Even looking at the top 7, unless something egregious happens for UConn, they're going to be getting into the swing of things for the Big East Conference, which they're heavily favored to go undefeated in, I think is completely reasonable to say. But then you look at some of the other teams that are just a combination of either SEC or Big Ten. Big Ten, after the holiday break, they're immediately going to get into things. I think it might take a game or two before SEC really starts to ramp up. But that's where we could see a little bit of some shifts, which I am very excited about. I think you look at Texas, who is really battle-tested, South Carolina, who is really battle-tested as well. And for UCLA, they've faced some really tough ranked opponents. Look at LSU. They had that win against Duke that was pretty convincing, but they haven't really gotten to the thick of it yet and gone down the SEC gauntlet. So it'll be interesting to see what we see from them and if there's any motion there. For Michigan, their only loss of the season came at the hands of UConn, but it was a close game. They've also played some pretty solid opponents as well. I'll be interested to see what they can do, as well as Maryland within the Big Ten once they really start to face some more of those competitive opponents. But outside of that top 7, I'm looking at the tie for number 8, which is in between TCU and Oklahoma. And last week, Oklahoma had jumped TCU, but I guess voters thought that TCU still showed a lot, and that's why there is a tie for that number 8 spot. I just find really interesting. You don't see that too often. Both really tough teams, though, that have also shown a lot, but again, can potentially show more once we get to conference play. And then just rounding out the top 10, Iowa State. When you have Audie Crooks, the nation's leading scorer, she scored 41 in their victory against Kansas. It's difficult to see them drop outside of the top 10.
Yeah, like you were just saying, the top 10 and the top 7, this seems to be what it's going to look like for some time. But It's also just because of how these teams are performing. Obviously, when you have UConn, Texas, South Carolina, UCLA, LSU, Michigan, Maryland, TCU, Oklahoma, Iowa State, no matter how you switch that order around, any of those teams are going to put up an absolute battle against each other. So very curious to see, as you were saying too, just what some of these shifts can really start to look like, which probably wouldn't happen until after the new year. SEC still has a handful of games for some of the teams to play that are still kind of outside of their conference, but Big Ten is getting into things. Big East, so is ACC. But we've also talked about the rise of Louisville, who has now defeated two ranked opponents. They climbed 3 spots and are now sitting at 13 after winning against then ranked number 17 Tennessee. But they have now fallen to 23rd. And it seems if Tennessee cannot start to put some things together, they may drop out of the top 25 in general.
Exactly. And they are going to need to figure out things expeditiously because they, again, are getting right into the thick of SEC play. And we already mentioned those teams from that conference that are in the top 10. Well, if you're looking at the entire scope of the poll, you have Kentucky that's at 11, Vanderbilt at 12, Mississippi at 15, even though they might drop a little bit after their loss. And yeah, that you have those other teams from the SEC. So like I said, it is not going to get any easier for them. Their next game is up against Southern Indiana. So it'll probably be a good last minute tune up for them. But yeah, the way that they lost to Louisville definitely left a couple things in question, I think, for them, and just developing that consistency. But for Louisville, you expect to see that rise the way that they've been winning recently. Had that win against Tennessee, I don't know if it was last week or the week before that, but they beat North Carolina, who is also a ranked opponent. But they're a team that we talked very highly of at the beginning of the season, and they were dropping these games to ranked opponents. But then you look at, they turned around and got these 2 wins. And so I think for both of us, it's very validating to see them get these wins, because we're watching the games. We're like, this is a good team. They just need to start getting these wins. And that's exactly what they did. I could honestly see them continue to rise, but with their resume, that their non-conference resume, I think it's going to really hold up when you look at some of the competition in the ACC, who is underperforming based off of what some people were predicting at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, Louisville, the team that we were saying they're really good. We just can't prove it yet, but now they're starting to get into the swing of things. But you mentioned conferences and the ACC. When we're looking at some of this conference supremacy, the Big Ten and the SEC are rating high right now, both having 8 ranked teams. The Big Ten would have had 9, but Washington did drop out of the rankings. But the Big 12 is next. They have 4 teams within the AP polls, and the ACC has 3. The Big East and Ivy League each have 1. Big East is obviously UConn. And then for the Ivy League, Princeton is sitting at the bottom at number 25, going 11-1. And honestly, I'm just very surprised and impressed by this Princeton team, because they have been on an absolute tear ever since they lost to Maryland. That was their only loss so far, and it was against obviously a ranked opponent who is sitting at number 7 right now, and they didn't even lose like overly significantly. And now they have just gone win for win for win. That's another team that I'm curious to see if they can really climb the ranks too and have that presence for the Ivy League.
Definitely. I mean, they're always one of those teams that always seem to stick around for the rankings, like you said, representing the Ivy League. But 2 teams I'll also just put a further spotlight on real quick is we see the emergence of Texas Tech into the rankings after they beat Baylor. I think we should keep an eye on Baylor, because in that Texas versus Baylor game, Talia Scott had gotten hurt, one of the nation's leading scorers, the main offensive just facilitator, playmaker for Baylor as well. She didn't play their next game, and then the game after against Texas Tech, she only played 2 minutes. So it'll be interesting to see how Baylor either maybe adjusts having to play without her or limited minutes with her.
Yeah, that can definitely be a significant impact for the team. Coming up after this, we are going to talk about the best freshmen in the country right now.
Nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again, channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Straight talks, trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto, all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move.
Best freshman in the country. So this is based off some of the preseason list as well, and their rankings. Some players aren't necessarily included in this. Thinking of UCLA's Sienna Betts and Emily Skinner for Duke because they had missed significant time so far to start this season due to injury. But at the top of the ranks, who also had a number 1 preseason ranking, is Jazzy Davidson from USC. Right now, she leads the team in scoring, rebounds, assists, and blocks. She's averaging 16 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 blocks. To put up those numbers as a freshman who has a lot of weight on her shoulders right now due to the fact that Juju Watkins is out. Even Geno Auriemma said that she is the best freshman in the country. And that says a lot considering she has really kind of had to hold it down when it comes to some of this shooting efficiency for USC and going up against some really tough opponents super early on. This is all a very young team.
Definitely. I think when you look at the numbers and just the fact that she is essentially the head of the snake for USC, who is currently ranked 17th best team in the country, as a freshman, that is extremely difficult to do. And she has just really taken that job on. I think it's very reasonable for Geno Auriemma to say that she is the best freshman in the country, even looking at her two-way play. I mean, she can score at such a high rate, so versatile on that end of the floor. But defensively, really great lateral movement. She can rack up blocks when she's guarding some of those smaller guards, and then the rebounding, of course. So definitely been impressed from what we've seen from Jazzy Davidson so far this season.
Yes. Next up on the list is Aaliyah Chavez, who her preseason ranking was number 5. But she is a player that is going to shoot the ball. She essentially has the green light for everything, especially from behind the perimeter. She is also leading her team, number 8 in scoring, averaging 18 points per game, who just had the All-SEC first-time pick last season of Reagan Beers, or at the beginning of this season, excuse me. So she's been a nice compliment in terms of that inside-outside presence as well. But she has taken 63 more field goal attempts than anyone else on the roster. And that's what we're saying. When she feels free to let it fly, she absolutely is going to.
Exactly. And you love that confidence in a freshman and just not being shy and confident in her own shot. But looking at how well Oklahoma has been playing recently and seeing where her being one of the primary ball handlers and playmakers in the backcourt, she is a huge part of that.
Next up, we have Blanca Quinones from UConn. Her preseason ranking was number 2, but she's been a really nice complement to this team. She stretches the floor really well. She's that stretch 4 for UConn. But when we're thinking of, that dominance between an Azzi Fudd and Sarah Strong, even a Sarah Williams, when we're thinking of that front court, It seems like every single game so far, when we're looking at the leading scorers of a UConn game, it's usually an AZ Fudd or a Sarah Strong at 1 and 2, and she's always consistently contributing 10 points, 7 points, whatever the case may be, which as a freshman and obviously coming into a program like that and playing under an AZ Fudd and a Sarah Strong in that capacity, she has shown to just be really efficient and is shooting nearly 70% right now.
Yeah, Geno talks so highly of her IQ. She had a little bit of experience playing overseas, and she really brought that into UConn. I'll talk about her scoring, her athleticism, but I feel like every single game she'll have 1 or 2 steals when she just picks someone up full court and takes the ball and goes the other way, finishes with a layup or an and one layup. But I'll use this opportunity too. There are more freshmen that we got to go over, but I'm going to throw in, just to put people on notice, Alicia Turnabes, who is a recent 6'7" freshman forward that will be joining South Carolina after the holiday break. And Dawn Staley says she has an incredible skill set and basketball IQ. She has a great touch around the rim. She can shoot it mid-range, stretch it out to 3. She's been playing for Tango Bourg's Basket in France, and they've always been dominant in their domestic league, also a participant in EuroLeague. But there's this one video, if you've never heard of her before, there's a video of her during Eurobasket picking someone and then going the other way, finishing off of 1 foot for a 2-handed dunk. And so I know she hasn't played a game of college yet. However, like I said, putting people on notice that I think she'll be climbing the ranks in this freshman list very soon. If she does decide to play this season, she'll be eligible, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. After seeing that video, I was just like, oh, right. That's literally
okay. Sorry we ever doubted you, Dawn.
Sorry, Queen. Won't happen again. Coming up, or sorry, not coming up. Our next couple of players, just to mention really quick, Grace Knox on the list from LSU, Addie Mack from Maryland, Aubrey Galvin, shout out to an Illinois native, from Vanderbilt, Aaliyah Crump at Texas, Nyla Brooks, Lara Samfai, and Madison Francis from Mississippi State. Sorry, previous name was from Stanford. I feel like another good one to chat about really quick is Aaliyah Crump, who I think has, when we're thinking of another player that complements kind of the Texas stars of Rory Harmon and Madison Booker right now, is an Aaliyah Crump, who's come in and also been really efficient and has great size and just overall balancing out those Texas touches. That's what I'm going to call them, those Texas touches.
I think the only reason she's not higher on the list is because she hasn't played a game since November 19th. I'll throw in another one, Lauren Whitaker from Gonzaga, one of the best mid-major freshmen in the country, in the nation. She's 2nd in scoring and 7th in rebounding.
Yeah. There's a lot of talented players that are within this list. We just mentioned a couple. But it's exciting times in women's basketball. But that'll do it for us today on Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you guys so much for joining. Sophia and I are going to take a little Christmas break and be back with you guys